Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning, any constitutional bigots.
Are you testing out new lines?
Just letting some fly around. Yeah,
All right. Yeah, I'm still trying to get used to the fact that we're dropping the old stuff now that we're in a new era and all of
that's
that.
right. Whole new insults.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, we are in a constitutional crisis apparently, so we'll have something along those lines, I guess, coming up here.
We are sort of in one, but anyway.
But anyway, so well, we've had a little bit of weather. I don't know what it was like your way.
Yeah, you know what? So I was reading about that just a few minutes ago, and Reston is kind of on a hill, about 450 feet up. And but the last three snowstorms, we've gotten the least snow of anybody. We got only 4.8 inches of this. I think up where you live, it was more than 6, right?
Well, I mean, for yesterday, I mean, I measured at least on the front, walk, came out to 1.25. I'm going to go back and measure in another area to see, because it looks like it should be a little bit more. I'm not saying it's going to be 6, but I think it was more than what I measured this morning. But I think, I'm trying to find cement or something, some solid surface, not grass, where I can stick the yardstick out and say, okay, here's where the reading is. But I don't know, maybe the sidewalk was a little bit, had been already kind of melting some of it as it goes along or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you would want to hit grass. I think the sidewalk itself probably militates against it.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll be doing another measurement post show.
Okay.
But I did notice it was we don't see this very often, the county sometimes struggles with snowplows, trying to have enough, usually getting enough people, enough vehicles out there, trucks out there to plow the roads, particularly the side streets, like where I in my neighborhoods. And but normally, we get the standard snowplow, the big truck with the plow in the front and everything like this. And then I look out the window this morning and I could hear something coming down the street. And what is it? It's a WSSC pickup truck with a plow in front of it. And I'm like, well, okay, so they requisitioned the water people to go out there and plow, stick a plow on their truck or whatever, and plow some neighborhoods too. I'm not quite sure how that works in the county. I don't know if the
WSSC is the water utility.
Right. I don't know if the county basically pays them back or something like that, I guess, because it's not a county enterprise. I mean,
right. It's them and Prince George's, and I think it's under the rubric of the state.
Ultimately. Yeah, something like that. So it's a public utility and regulated and everything like that. So it does deliver us, what is that? Kind of the gold level water service that nobody ever voted for.
Right.
So we pay mightily for the water that we get here.
Yep.
And makes me wish that I had the kind of setup my cousin has out in Utah, which is just get it from the ground.
Well water.
Yeah. You can have as long as there's water down there, and you can get water. So
yeah, there's things that can go wrong with that too. But yeah, and up in Montgomery County, it's like, leftism can work there like it works few other places because, so many people are rich, right? Your leftism does not compromise the biggest industry in town, right? Which is the government and all the people begging the government for money, right? That's basically what we do here in Washington. And so you don't really lose it to that, right? Most places, like all that leftism would also have a bad impact on the employer, right? Like Detroit, destroying Detroit with leftism not only hurt Detroit, it also hurt Ford and Chrysler all the other people who make stuff in Detroit, so it's, our big industry is kind of impervious to that because we print the money, but, Montgomery County takes care of it, cell phone taxes and all this kind of stuff, exorbitantly taxed, exorbitantly regulated, top heavy staffing of all government offices, the Montgomery County school system, the fastest growing sector of the workforce is administrators who make more than $120,000 a year, right? Not the classroom. They're not trying to beef up resources for, increasingly, like you have an increasing number of people in parts of the county that, they've been in America for 15 minutes or whatever, right? But we're not doing more for them. We're doing more to have more administrators and more planning and more, non-classroom stuff.
Yeah, that's why I started. I think so I advocate. We need a Doge, everywhere. Montgomery
you
County
definitely need one there.
Montgomery County definitely needs one. Yeah, I mean, I know. I think you've brought up this middle management issue before on the county schools, and you're right, because that has just grown. That has exploded. I mean, I'm old enough now. I mean, I was in elementary school back in the 60s, right? And and went through schools, way back when. We did not have what schools have today. I mean, schools have got so many people in their pipeline, not in the schools themselves, and then at the central offices and stuff like that. You just have all these bureaucrats running around, and you're like, so what are they doing exactly?
Right.
And you're just, I don't know. I mean, this is such a microcosm of our federal government, is just keep adding on to middle management and corporations. I mean, I think this is where you get, Elon Musk, when he took over Twitter, he just decimated, the ranks in essence, but he just basically cut out a lot of people saying like, do I need all these people? I'm not sure what they're doing here. And let's just get down to the bare bones of employees. So I think, his goal really is to run Twitter, now X, as efficiently as possible, which meant that he didn't need all those people. But, you look at those, the other tech companies and other corporations, is that's part of the problem. And I think that's where, Meta, Facebook, and some of these other guys also started to do things. They have done some cost cutting by letting people go that are kind of in that middle management, because they're just like, I don't know what we're doing with them. And a lot of them grew during COVID, added on a lot of people. And then post COVID, they're like, I just don't understand why we have to have all these people here. So maybe we are. I mean, but seeing it on a federal government level, seeing what Musk is doing, it definitely is shaking things up, to a large extent. And we'll keep, they're not going to stop until somebody really tries to take them out, I think, at this point. But we can keep talking about that. So we did get a inflation reading this morning for the month of January. So I mean, Trump was only in office the last 10, 11 days of the month or whatever.
Right.
But it ticked up. It was higher than what the market was predicting or expecting or wanting or whatever. So I know the market opened lower this morning, because they look at that, they tie that directly to Federal Reserve and interest rates and future potential cuts. What they don't want to see is an interest rate, an increase coming down the pipeline. So it's still a problem. There are things that are out there that are still kind of making it, what they like to call sticky. And I'm not sure that we're going to see inflation really get under control anytime soon. I mean, I think the tariffs are going to kind of cloud how this really goes, at least in the short term, until we get a little bit better idea, how much of the tariffs are really going to go into effect and for how long.
So, I don't know how much or for how long either. I also don't know that they really make that big a difference. They didn't in the first Trump term. We actually had, wages grew in relation to inflation, right? It was wages grew at about 2.5 or almost 3 times the rate of inflation. So, It didn't really cost us anything the first time around. So I'm not convinced that we'll now. They keep saying Trump is not doing anything for the economy. Well, yeah, he is. He's opened the spigot for selling LNG all over the world. He has reopened U.S. drilling off some of the coasts in Alaska and elsewhere on public lands and so forth. And so when people start seeing the opportunity to drill in productive areas again and start pouring more money into drilling, which won't take long because those guys want to make money. And they know that there's a big order coming from the U.S. government to refill the strategic petroleum reserve. So, which is, it's down to about 6% or so. So, there's some oil is about to get bought by the U.S. The U.S. government to refill that. They will have to, which will start to get the market working, the market energy working in our favor, prices going down, supply going up, and more. That's what we did the first time. He lowered the price of petroleum, which lowered the price of everything else. Which he also fixed the tax code, which they're also working on. So you could depreciate quicker, and corporate rates went down. Individual rates went down. People had more money to spend and more incentive to spend it. And that's how we got it under control the first time. And so far as I know, that's what Trump's plan is again, right? His tax legislation is basically to extend the cuts from the first one.
Yeah. And I mean, the economy has, truthfully has defied expectations anyway. I mean, even under Biden, in the sense of, even when inflation was running extremely high, people were still buying things,
Right. Another thing to remember is too, it came out like there was, someone came out yesterday that worked for Biden and said, his economic stats were basically lies and things were much worse than they are. And you see, inflation is up, growth is down. Biden handed Trump a pretty terrible, moribund economy, right? Just by normal standards. And so when they say, "Oh, Trump didn't fix it; it was Biden," it won't. No, that's not going to be the case. There was a thing out yesterday that they've lied about the jobs, which we all knew, right? They put these job reports out, and then a week later, well, we're downsizing we said it was 400,000. It's actually 22. So dramatic revisions after everybody stopped watching. And he handed off a bad economy, so Trump's going to get some running room to fix it.
Yeah, and I made a note, on my phone, so that some of the last kind of set of statistics, between December, January, kind of thing like this, that really will be January. Anything for January, I think, is going to be my starting point. Is whatever these numbers are. That's going to be. I'm going to use that kind of as the baseline of the handover, and we'll see whether or not the government figures going forward, these figures go down or improve or whatever going forward. So we have something to start with. But yeah, I mean, Trump's coming in, with dealing with issues that are, inflation is higher than it was when he left office the first time. So there's
more than twice as high.
There's going to be some real challenges going forward, because just like anything else, 4 years, a lot has changed. Wages shot up at an amazing rate, but that helps fuel the inflation. That does a lot of things, and it doesn't stop the left from clamoring for more money and more spending. So Trump, hopefully with Elon's help, at least advice, they'll be able to start clamping down on some of the excesses and getting under control. It's always possible there'll be some short-term pain, but we kind of need to do something to get the ship back where we want to do.
Right. There was short-term pain to Reagan too.
Yeah, and I don't know, whether or not a 2% Federal Reserve target. There's a lot of time spent on that. I don't know if that's the thing that we're really looking at, but we do want to see inflation, get down to a lower level and stay down, and kind of get back. We like to get it back to, and then stay in that area where, it was, before Biden took office. And this will probably mean doing some things that are going to be unpopular, at least in the short term, in order to do that, because things went way out of control under Biden. All that spending, just put us set up a situation where even though inflation, cooled down, I'm going to say cool down after its big run up, Biden just set up this whole, set of issues that somebody's, for Trump and his people to fix. And there's no rapid fix for that or easy fix to try to do that, because he basically took the genie out of the bottle and it's like, we need to go back and get inflation back under control. There really isn't anything Biden did to get it back under control, technically.
Right.
So hopefully the Trump team has got some things that they're going to do that will be good for us all in the long run. And you talk about the tax cuts. We'll see how much of these things go through. The breakneck pace at which Trump has thrown out things, policies, executive orders, proposals, whatever you want to call them, has just makes your head spin. But it definitely makes the liberals, because you pointed out last week, he comes out and he does DEI. Liberals get all they're all upset about that, but he moves on while the liberals are still talking about it, right? We're kind of moving along on this continuum, and the liberals are still like, they're always like a step. Now they're a step or two behind. They're fussing about this, and we're moving on to this. I mean, you see the protests by those Democrats trying to get into the Department of Education. Well, it's on the agenda, but we're talking about a few other things right now. And while the Democrats are still trying to figure a way to get inside the DOE buildings, like we're members of Congress, we demand that we get in. Who are you? What's your name? Show me your ID.
Yeah, that's right. And meanwhile, they're over there essentially closing the Department of Education.
Right, and then
they have the building because there's nothing else there.
Right, and I guess Maxine Waters then pivoted to the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, right? The DOE thing wasn't working well for her, so she switched to that. They're trying to find, the Democrats are desperately trying to find something that will resonate, right? Something that will get their side back on track. And this is almost kind of where the Trump strategy is like, they're doing so much. The Democrats aren't sure what to do, and because they're a step or two behind, they can't get any traction.
That's right. They're not getting traction, and they know it, and they it's starting to drive them nuts. But like, which thing do you oppose? And right now, you're caught in this loop with the USAID stuff, because if you say, oh, they shouldn't go in that building, they shouldn't let these young kids go in there and look at all this stuff. Okay. Whatever, these young kids are finding billions of dollars of waste. It's not fraud because it's just what it was supposed to go. Well, first of all, we don't know where it went, right? All we know is it went out the door. We don't know whether it was fraudulently handled on the other side. And second of all, the point is not really fraud anyway. The point is, they intended to give, $4 million to organize the atheist community in Nepal. That's a real one. That really came out. Okay. They intended to do that. It's not an accident. It's not someone stealing, making up their own. They intended to do that. Okay. They intended to buy the comic books in Peru. And people say, well, it's not that big a part of the budget, right? But, it shows that when they're making these decisions, they have nothing but contempt for the me's and you's of the world, right? They don't care what we think at all. They don't care what they do with our money at all, right? It's paying off their little friends and so forth. So, that's where we are on this. We have, enormous amounts of, American people are looking at this and saying, no, well, we want to know more about the waste. We're not concerned about Elon Musk stealing the money, the richest guy in the world stealing the money. We're concerned about where that money's been going before this.
Yeah, I was trying to find. I saw a post by a friend of mine, because I think his mom. I think his mom had worked for USAID under Trump. But anyway, I remember vaguely seeing something where he posted about it, and he was to the someone who had a little closer to it, just was talking about how bad it was, and yeah, it's refreshing to see this being rooted out, at least exposed. And this is what the liberals are afraid of, right? I mean, is just that the things that they had put forth are now being exposed, and now, the emperor has no clothes. The agencies, what are they supposed? How are they supposed to answer these questions? Will everything be fraud? Not necessarily, but when you see what we're spending money on, you're kind of like, why? Uh,
Right.
And I think people. I think I've had some
And a
friends
lot
that
of it is, the other thing is that they're going to have to deal with, and this is going to be a big story, is that a lot of this money circled back into the Democrat Party, right? And Democrat Party candidates. The government was supporting one party against the other.
Yeah. So it's it's time to do this. I don't know how much success they're going to have in the long run, but they've shaken a lot of DC to its core, and I think it's
Right.
kind of
And they've shown you can do this. You can
right.
go in and do this, and you can delete agencies, and you can expose all their waste, fraud, and abuse, and we can do without those people in those agencies.
Yeah.
So
And
they may not get all the way to the bottom this time, but they're proving that you can do this.
right. And I mean, it goes, as going back to the first Trump term where he wanted to drain the swamp, and it didn't really work. There was lots of issues. He didn't, they got bogged down, and they hired a lot of really terrible people and things like that. This time around, it's definitely loyalists and people that are going to work for the cause, work, and be loyal to him. I think there was a report that, part of the vetting is, if you've ever criticized Trump, no way you're getting the job. If there's any kind of social media post like that, you're not getting a job. Even if you worked for him before, even if you worked in the first administration, if you had criticized him since then, that's it. Interview over, whatever, just your piece of paper, your resume goes into the out file. It's like, it's not going to happen. So, it's a very different look. And as a result, you just have this army of Trumpers that are going through here and saying, we understand what we have to do, and we're going to try to do it. And as you say, yeah, we looked at Reagan, when he wanted to, get rid of the Department of Education, and couldn't do it, ran into a lot of roadblocks. Trump is just saying, we're going to go do it, and I think part of it too is they're not worried about the legal consequences right now, right? I mean, they're willing to fight this, knowing that there's going to be some potential court fights or challenges to this, but they're going out there and they're going to say, we're going to do it. And if it goes to court, fine, we'll fight it in court. But in the meantime, we're going to do what we think we need to do. And I think it's having a very positive effect in the long run. And, if you're a government worker, you're kind of like, is my agency next?
Right. Right. You see them calling, you'll see the messages go out. Oh, they're here. Those guys are here. And it's pretty funny. But yeah, you're right. They're gonna roll back a lot of stuff. They're really doing it. For one thing, Trump doesn't have to run again, right? For another thing is, you've hit a moment in American history where people are like, yeah, what we're doing is not working. They were dissatisfied before all this started, right? And there's definitely there's an itch that needs to be scratched, and they're doing it. Trump and them are doing it. They're doing it round the clock. And so, it's not having the effect the Democrats are like, this is a constitutional crisis. The country's run off the rails. It's like, no, it's not. It's doing what it's supposed to do. Like, you're now, they have to defend corruption now. They have to defend these payouts and all this money, going into their coffers and paying the AP and paying the New York Times, paying Politico, right? They have to defend that. They go, oh, it sure is like their content sure look like they got paid. Right? How do you explain that? So I mean, that's he struck the right nerve, and it's like Scott Jennings said the other day. Trump's superpower is getting on the right side of 80% issues. Right? He gets 80-20 issues, and he's on the 80 side, and he you can't do anything about it. Girls and guys in women's sports, they're all upset about that. Trump did it. It's gone. We're done with that. You talked about DEI earlier. No one talks about that one anymore, right? The circus has moved on to the point that Trump wiped out this entire industry 3 weeks ago, and no one talks about it. It's just gone.
Yeah, no, I mean it's been amazing, because I think I mentioned, as we talked about this before, is that once it became clear that Trump was probably going to win, more corporations started backing away from these things, even before the election, and then it accelerated post-election. But you now have some of the biggest corporations in America totally dismantling, their DEI offices and things like that, and getting away from that. There's still there are going to be some holdouts, and there some are just reducing them or renaming them or whatever. But it's a sea change. It is it's a dramatic sea change in the way corporate America looks at things, and this is the Trump effect, saying like, we are going to play ball.
I'm going to give you another example. So we did this research at MRC about what Google did. Google, if you looked up news about Kamala Harris, right, before the election, right, Google, you got a long list of stories about Kamala Harris, all favorable, right? If you looked up news about Donald Trump, you know what you got? A long list of favorable stories about Kamala Harris, right? And literally it would be 60 or 70 entries down before there was anything about Trump at all, right? They just it was just blatant election interference. You can't find out, you cannot search Google and come away with any workable information about Trump, right? So now, Google gave $1 billion to the thing. I was thinking this morning, and it's like, so are they going to do that stuff again? Are they going to shield the content? Are they going to, go in and if you Google, there's a guy, Greg Steube, who's a lawmaker from Florida, who's big on tech issues, right? So they've been against Steube because he's not on their side of the tech issue battles, right? So if you looked up, information on him, it came up about his opponents, right? They did everything they could to get him beat, right? So now they're giving Trump $1 million. The guys at the, Peaches at the inauguration, they're all palling around. They're all fixing their bias, which they said didn't exist 6 months ago, right? Because, the winds have changed, right? The winds have changed to the point that you cannot be, Google's response to legal stuff was like you were talking about Trump's earlier. They don't really care if they lose, right? They have so much money that, okay, if we lose, we'll pay the fine. We're going to do what we want until they absolutely stop us, and then we'll pay the fine, right? And so, that's kind of where Trump is now.
Yeah. I mean, look, I hadn't thought about it until it happened, but because I don't know, when Trump declared the Gulf of America Day, which just cracked me up, and now you have Google Maps, and I think Apple has done the same thing. They've all, for American users, or at least North America, that is now what you see if you look for that. So they've all adjusted, and that's pretty quick. I mean, they've moved on this pretty quickly.
Quicker than they went Reagan Airport, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, right. No, they would drag their feet on these things normally, but now it's kind of like they can see what's in the air, and they're like, we have to get on board or stay on board, because this is what it's going to be like for the next 4 years,
right?
At the very least, of this kind of a thing like this. And
the other thing is, you're not the lords of the town anymore, right? So the other thing is, all the State Department, Pentagon, White House, they've all gone through these things where they're like, who gets the prime places in the briefing room, who gets the offices to do their production within the building, right? So it's supposed to rotate amongst, there's 3 organizations, they rotate those in and those out, and you have to do the pool work and so forth to make up for having the increased access, right? So it's always been CNN, CBS, NBC. So they moved them out, and they put in, I think one of them's Newsmax, and one of them was HuffPost, right? They gave HuffPost a seat for some reason, but to show that it's not all fixing it for conservatives, but the Biden administration ignored Breitbart, right? Why do they get to do that? Breitbart's reaching as many people as HuffPost or Newsweek or Time, the people they're letting in the door, right? So you can't say they're not. They are. The figures are right there for everybody to see. So you kind of have a different deal now. This president, as he looks at the press, he's not. There's no deference. Like, he doesn't care who the White House Correspondents Association president is at all, right? Because he doesn't have any intention to taking any direction from him at all. So it's just a completely new day of how they cover this, and they're furious, right? But there's nothing they can do about it. There's no popular support. You've got to reinstate Caitlin Collins's proper office at the building. No, you don't. You don't have to do that at all. You don't need them at all anymore. I mean, the entire the equation of media and the force media brings on politics and societal action, right, has completely. Well, it's not completely, but close to eradicated. It's a different day.
Yeah, I don't remember. I can't remember what was the question that Trump was asked on the plane, and then Trump looked at the guy and asked him who he was working for, and he said HuffPost, and Trump's like, oh, I thought they were dead.
Yeah, that's kind of a stock line. He said that someone asked him about Musk being on the cover of Time, sitting at the Resolute desk. How does that make you feel? He goes, Time magazine's still in business? And it's like, you're not rattling Trump. They keep thinking, oh, we can create this rivalry with him and Musk, and he'll start hating Musk and this and that and the other. He's not going to start hating Musk. That's not what this is at all.
Yeah, I think, in light of the fact that the Department of Defense has assigned one of those slots to HuffPo. He's like, hey, maybe Trump wasn't paying attention that HuffPo's got a slot over there, despite not having a defense reporter. They don't cover the Defense Department, basically. But that also brings up that whole thing about where they wanted to open up the White House press briefing room to others, right? To all the influencers or whatnot. Yeah. So that last figure I had seen was 11,500 applications is what the White House had said they had received for this. Now they're not going to be able to. They're not going to put all 11,500 people in there. I mean, I know that I think there's some probably lefty influencers and things like that are going to try to get in as well. But there'll be. I don't know what the top limit is in terms of how they're going to do that. But I keep thinking, it's like, I'd like to see the look on the face of, traditional media, I mean, the New York Times, Washington Post guys, things like that, when they see that flood of interest of people to cover, and the fact that they know that this is coming down the pike, that they're going to be sharing that room, that White House briefing room, with people who, make a living, being on TikTok, etc., and providing, news or information. Because a lot of people do get their news, from TikTok and YouTube and whatnot. So
X is the number one news source in the world now. It's not even close.
So there's things out there for people to do. I mean, it's where new media such as really supplanted the old media in terms of news gathering and putting things out there and doing it. They're putting it out there in a form that people are willing to watch and listen to and hear.
Right.
So, which is what these traditional outlets are not doing. So it's interesting to see how that's flipped. But it is one, I think I mentioned last week, it is kind of reminiscent though of, when Sean Spicer ran the briefing room. He had the TV he brought in, and people could ask questions via that screen. He brought them in by video. So he had I think he had like Jim Hoff, or he had other people. Some of our conservative friends and others that couldn't necessarily afford to make the trip to DC, but they could be brought in that way. A totally different look two things. Once Trump was out of office, it reverted back, to normal as such, whatever, and then we had to live with Jen Psaki and Karine Jean-Pierre trying to navigate that, which was another disaster. So it's nice to see things where we get a little more transparency and openness in the White House. And as you had mentioned at one point in time, not this person having to shuffle through a book like, here's my answer. Where's my answer?
Right. Right. She just knows. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Competence. It's everywhere in this. Like there's competent people all over this administration.
Yeah. So I want to go back a little bit. So, so I guess it was last week we talked a little bit about kind of MAGA Gaza, and things are still kind of churning through and whatever, but we're not really on that issue. We're now, where Trump just threw down kind of the gauntlet and said, he wants those hostages released, not in drips and drabs. He wants them all released. Otherwise, it's like let it all fly, right? Kind of, and that which I'm glad that he's saying something like that, because I've always had a hard time with this situation that we always wind up with, where when hostage negotiations occurs, like our side, in this case Israel, they get back a handful of people, whoever may be alive, which is probably
completely innocent people right, going to a rock show or whatever,
and they're getting them back 2 or 3 at a time. But on the other hand, they have to release far more militants back to Hamas, to wreak more havoc. And it always seems to be a one-sided deal. But I'm glad that Trump is basically saying, give us everybody you got left, kind of thing like that. Otherwise, I think, the ceasefire deal is just not worth it. I mean, it's just
right.
Why are we going?
Right. They've been very careful, because they're trying to get, if there's anybody alive over there, they want to get them out alive. Right. But I mean, these people were laying in tunnels for months, weren't fed once or twice a week. Why are we taking it easy on them? Yeah, it's just horrible what they did. And so, once, the idea that like, you're going to honor this on set by Saturday, or you're not going to be around anymore. I'm completely relaxed about that. Completely relaxed about, the other one that the leftists are on now. Trump's like, no, the people of Gaza cannot go back to Gaza. Right. There's nothing to go to. First of all, there's nothing to go to. Right. It's been leveled, and second of all, you're not going to go back over there and make trouble again. You're not sitting 1 inch out of Israel shooting rockets in Israel anymore. We're stopping that now. And so like, they can all get mad, but in a few months or a few weeks, they'll all be used to it and it won't matter anymore. It's like all this other stuff Trump is doing. Once you see it work a little bit, people are going to back off.
Yeah, I mean, I think didn't he even mention aid to Jordan and Saudi Arabia or something?
Yeah,
like that?
He's going to work with whoever takes them. They're going to give them money. Egypt, I guess, was going to take some of them, although they don't really want them. But Jordan has made a pretty generous offer, so I think Jordan will be getting some money today.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, Trump is, he's just he just kind of changed how these things are done. So it's like this is going to be the way it needs to be.
It's also we're not building Gaza anymore. Remember this time last week we were building Gaza, right? Okay, no, U.S. troops there. Now it's Egypt and Jordan,
right?
That's already taken care of, and it was already going to be taken care of.
Yeah, I mean, we're
going to be the guarantor of it. Right. We're going to make the one to make sure it happens.
Yeah. Once again, he puts something out there, gets some response, but then he just basically kind of puts other things in place and then moves on to the next thing. But yeah, I mean, I think Israel deserves to get their hostages back right away.
Right.
We don't know how many more are left for sure that are still alive, but this dribs and drabs thing is kind of how I think Hamas continues to string Israel along, because who in the heck trusts Hamas?
Right.
What can you trust them for? So, but I just was kind of curious about that. I did have this. I was curious about your thoughts about JD Vance. So he was in France and he gave a speech about artificial intelligence, and there's not going to be any bias in artificial intelligence. Uh, you know, whether or not you want to comment on AI itself, the fact of the matter that we have a vice president who can actually speak,
Yeah,
and get
somebody
it.
did a mashup of his speech, and Harris talking about AI. And she's like, well, first thing, it's 2 letters, AI. I mean, that's really what she said. It's like you can really see we dodged a bullet there. We really dodged a bullet by not electing her. It would have we would have been in serious trouble. That was she. There are people who, I may well be one of them. They were too dumb to be president. She was definitely one of
Yeah, I mean,
them.
it's just hard to think about the fact that what we saw on the campaign trail, just this constant, kind of word salad, just mixed up things.
Ineptitude, no
Yeah,
clue what's going on.
even leaving the media somewhat scratching their heads at what she had just said, and to think that she would have been the leader of the free world in essence, and then going around giving speeches, and then hoping to make policy and whatnot, and directing foreign policy through her State Department and whatnot. It's like, this is scary stuff.
Yeah, it really was.
And so it's such a relief. I think we're seeing what you and I expected, when it comes to foreign policy, is that things are starting to shape up, with Trump in office. I mean, he's laid out some parameters here and said, we're going to do this and do that. He's not finished yet. I mean, he still has to find the right formula there for Ukraine and Russia, but he's already, I think, kind of given some indications about how this probably should go down and should end.
Yeah, he's starting to round into form on that one too.
Yeah.
I
So I
guess
mean,
Higgs has
I
said
can
this
kind of see
morning
the end.
that they were not returning to the pre 2021 borders is not realistic. So
Yeah, and that's hard. I mean, in one sense, it's like, yeah, man, it's like I realize that the whole annexation bit from, what was it, 2014. That's not going to happen. You're not going to get that back. Okay, that's done. For Crimea, but then
Crimea,
but
Georgia, it's done.
other things that they've been as Russia slaughtered, like, Russia. What right did Russia have to go and do all these things? They came in under false pretenses, but to roll it back too far, I think would actually be rather difficult. I don't know how you achieve a peaceful solution by trying to roll it back that far. It's tough. This is not easy. Where you to get Ukraine to say, we're now going to be a smaller country in essence.
Yeah.
And to give Putin really any kind of semblance of any kind of victory just kind of, just doesn't sit well with me. But on the other hand, we have to end this thing.
Yeah, and there's no viable. I mean, if you want to get them out of Russia, out of Ukraine, if you want to root them out of there, get ready for a long on boots on the ground fight with heavy weapons that could go nuclear. So, the thing would have been to do what Trump did, which was keep Putin from doing this. Right? He prevented Putin from doing this for 4 years. As soon as Trump was out of the way, Putin started moving pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was February 23rd is when this invasion occurred 3 years ago. I mean, we're almost at the 3-year mark, okay?
Yeah.
And we're still slogging along. I mean, Russia has definitely made some inroads, but this has been a long slog, as you and I had talked about before. Russia just keeps throwing people at this. They don't really care. They're just going to keep throwing people at this.
They're throwing North Koreans at it.
They're right. They're throwing North Koreans at it, right? It's like, okay, well, we're getting a little bit low on our guys. Let's go into North Korea and get their people and throw them at the problem, But because of their communist allies, in essence, they still have the supply line that they can keep bringing people in. I don't know that China is willing to throw a lot of their people in per se,
right?
Soldiers on the front line, but North Korea certainly was willing to give them some people. Ukraine, I'll still give them credit for being so dogged in this, that they've held on much longer than I thought they could, based on the size of the country and everything like this, and having the fact that there are no NATO troops on the ground to fight back against it. It's all Ukraine, has had to do it with their own people. They get advice from NATO, and they get material and some money from NATO, but they're not getting physical bodies, as combat troops.
Right.
So the odds were against them by a large margin when this thing began, and yet they're still standing,
Yeah.
which has got to drive Putin crazy. I mean,
That's right.
right? I think we talked about that too. It's just that he thought this was going to be a 2 or 3 day thing. It's more now. Now it's like a 3-year thing. Not the way he mapped it out in his head at all. Interesting stuff with our Department of Justice, intervening and saying that they needed to drop the case against Eric Adams, mayor of New York City. I don't know. I mean, Adams definitely has been, he's been very critical of the Biden administration's immigration policy, right? I mean, once he got to see it front and center, once he got all those immigrants being bussed in from Texas, I don't know, did he get any from Florida? I know he got some from Texas, but he was getting those people, and they have spent a ton of money housing them and having to deal with the aftermath of that. And then comes this kind of corruption, issue. Now, I guess there have been, some guilty pleas that have been extracted by, the attorney, general or whatever in New York. But, your thoughts about Eric Adams? Is this something where the Trump administration is saying, this guy, we can help him because he's kind of going on the right path on the immigration side, or is there other things going on here?
Well, he was charged, just like Trump. He was charged because of who he was, not what he did. And so I think that the Trump administration kind of recognized that and said, we got bigger fish to fry. And part of it is that, he's gotten sensible on immigration.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know it's, I don't know. I look at it, so Eric Adams is very thankful to Donald Trump.
Yeah. So, which can make a lot of difference in terms of, Donald Trump has a lot of like prosecutors and judges and stuff up there he has to deal with. And, he has Eric Adams on his side.
I'll be curious when Adams comes up for re-election, how this part that plays out, that, he had all these charges hanging over his head, and then Trump administration comes in there and says, no more. And so he's going to be able to run for re-election, and how much his opponents, will try to hold against him, and also any ties to Trump, that he may have as a result of this. But,
I'd love to run against Tish James, right?
Yeah.
In the next election, because all you can say you did was went after Trump, and you won a case, but he hasn't paid any of that money, and he's not going to pay any of that money. So, what did you win?
Yeah. Yeah. So the Trump Justice Department is using its might and to go through and try to clean some things up and say, this is, we want to do things. We're going to do things a little bit differently here, and we're not going to prosecute all these people just for the sake of whatever, just because the Democrats thought they were guilty of doing something. What about the pardoning of Rod Blagojevich? I mean, his sentence had been commuted, which already had been kind of an interesting thing before by Trump. Now it's all wiped off, right? Wiped off the map.
Right. Well, I think he wanted to point him for ambassador to somewhere or something. Serbia.
There was something about that at some point.
Yeah, so I think it's more about it. I don't. They were never. I mean, Blagojevich obviously has some stuff in common with Trump as a politician, right? He's kind of the same populist guy. Has a lot to say. Some of it doesn't always 1,000% add up. So he was trying to sell a Senate seat, and he's probably paid the price for that. That's not it's not all that there's not really a lot of victims to that crime. So,
Yeah, the media didn't seem to be too outraged at that, though, were they? I mean,
no, I mean, he's one of theirs, and
yeah,
it's kind of so what at this point.
Yeah, and he'd been out of office for a long time. He'd been out of office, had the sentence, had it commuted. I mean,
So this must have happened in like 08, 09 when Obama was elected president.
yeah, because he was
selling
Obama's Senate seat, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's kind of old news, and just doing that, it's still, and the stuff that Trump's done is still of lesser degree than the stuff Biden did on his way out, right? I mean,
right. That's right.
Which a lot of
like
stuff.
Like among the things Biden did is like this was going to be a big deal is, he killed all those chickens, like 100 million chickens, right? Because there was bird flu, and now so he's trying to drive up the cost of eggs, and it'll last for a little while, but it won't last for long because they put all their people back in. The chickens are rolling again.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, we've had bird flu for years, and it comes and it goes. The number is what winds up being key in the end in terms of how many you wipe out, because it takes a little while to get the flock back up and the numbers back up, and everything like that. But I have a feeling that this is one of those things that we're gonna face that kind of up and down nature with eggs. Is those 86 cents a dozen eggs that I had back in like 2019. I'm never going to see that again.
I mean, I don't know about that. I don't know that, like, once it starts going down, what's the breaking mechanism? It's just down to what it costs and what it costs to transport.
Yeah, well, I'm just not. I mean, I'm not an agricultural expert. I don't know what the issue is with the bird flu. Why we can't get a better handle of this? This thing keeps coming back, and we can't seem to kind of eradicate it to keep it to a bare minimum. And so they keep
politicized,
and they keep trying to do it. I mean, look, I mean, they had articles about they'd found it in chickens here in Montgomery County in backyard flocks. There are a lot of people out here in Montgomery County that are raising chickens in their backyard, but you get bird flu, those chickens they're toast. That's it. They have to kill them to prevent potential spread anywhere else. But it creates this crazy panic mentality among people at this point. It's as I posted yesterday, it's kind of like eggs become really, really precious, and part of the battle is that you actually got to be able to find them somewhere. Costco is my barometer, because I mean, Costco is our go-to store for like everything, and then Lidl or Aldi or Walmart or then maybe a Giant or a Safeway. It's kind of the order of things for our lives here. And I walk into a Costco and there's not an egg in sight, and I'm like, okay, I don't think I've seen this since the pandemic. Maybe it's this is.
Yeah, I bought 30 for $8 the other day at Giant. I'm like, I'm sort of not believing this egg thing at all.
Yeah, so I think it just depends upon where you are and things like that. To see how it goes, because other people will report wherever they are. It's like, eggs are like $8 a dozen. It's like, okay, whoa, what kind of eggs are you buying there?
Yeah,
I mean, exactly. I think that sounds to me more like the price of eggs at like Amazon Fresh, part of the Amazon network of Whole Foods, Amazon thing. You're getting the pricier eggs that way. So I don't know. It's hard unless you have to figure out how to compare the same size and type of egg to each other. Not the brown eggs versus the white eggs, and all these other things. Not the organic eggs, which they always, whatever, all these, they have so many different types of eggs they'll put on a shelf. It's like, make sure you're comparing kind of apples to apples in this sense, when you're doing all of this. Last one, I think, here as we close off. Well, and it goes along with Trump on the airplane, which was I watched a little bit of that, which I thought was hilarious. But Trump and Musk in the Oval Office doing Q&A. I'm like,
with Musk's kid, Musk's son. I mean, imagine the stories that kid will be able to tell. When I was hanging in the Oval with Trump and my dad.
Did the liberal media lose their mind on this one?
They totally did. And you know what? If you listen to what he said, it was straight common sense, right? It's like we're finding so much waste that the American people should be embarrassed, right? And like they keep whining about these inspector generals. Why didn't they find this? You know, why did all these inspector generals that Trump fired, they're all mad at it. Why weren't they finding this? Why weren't we hearing about this before? This is huge, MAGA-sized waste, right? You got to get rid of this. You got to make this go away. And American people don't get, they don't get like the excuses for not doing it,
All right. I lied. There's one more thing I did want to throw in there because it goes along with waste, which is say goodbye to the penny. Maybe finally, after all this time, we will actually stop minting pennies, losing money on the manufacture of pennies, the minting of pennies, and just deal with the number of pennies that we have in circulation and get people to bring them out of their jars and sofas and what the pockets of their pants or whatever, and just do that. Because it's one of those, it is kind of crazy that we have to keep minting more coins, even though use of cash continues to dwindle, right? I mean, we use less cash over time, and yet the pennies and nickels and dimes and all these kinds of things. And I think the dimes and the quarters, we can actually make money off of those. But the nickels and the pennies, we lose money, by minting them. But the penny, Barack Obama tried to get rid of the penny. John McCain tried to get rid of the penny. But it's almost as if, Donald Trump saying, I'm telling the Treasury Secretary to stop this. And apparently Lawrence Tribe has said, it looks like it's legal. It's constitutional that he could actually make this, order request of the Treasury Secretary, and the Treasury could stop minting pennies. Are you going to lament the fact that there may be no more pennies minted?
I'm pro penny. Well, here's the thing about it. It's like, okay, we pay for most stuff electronically, but if something costs 67 cents, what do we do? Right? We don't have a coin for that. You want to cut out nickels, okay, or dimes, or maybe dimes and keep nickels. I could see that, right? If you got to cut something, right? Because there's alternatives. There's other ways to make that amount, but there's no other way that unless everything's a multiple of 5, you got to have pennies.
Right. All right. So the counter argument to that is that anytime you run to one of those arguments, because there's maybe an item on the shelf that's taxable, that is a 5 or a 0 or whatever. But with sales tax, inevitably, it'll be an odd amount. It may come up to a 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever. So then what you do is that the store automatically rounds up or rounds down to create that. And
see, I'm not keep making pennies. Making pennies is better than the store rounding up and down.
Well, but once again, part of the counter argument is that there's been a couple of studies apparently about, they call that the rounding tax, and they said that they've done a study where they say that in the end, it's a wash. That as many things wind up getting rounded up as rounded down, so that the effect is basically net zero. So in the end, use electronic payments. I think that's,
I mean, I haven't spent any cash, and since I was on vacation last summer, I don't think I've given anybody cash for anything. So, I get where you're going there, but I see very little savings and creating a lot of confusion, and it kind of creates a problem we don't have.
Well, I'm just saying that too. The other thing is just that, we have a lot of pennies in circulation. They're just not in circulation because people have got them in their homes and they're not using them. We have this, I've got a jar of coins, here at home, right? And I probably should be toting them off to the bank and just, it's probably, I don't know, probably only a few bucks, but there are coins, a mixture of pennies and things that I wind up getting change from various things. Sometimes I get a refund somewhere, and it's like, I don't like this stuff. I stick them in a jar, but that takes it out of circulation. So every time I remove that from circulation, it's more coins that the Treasury says we need, because they're getting their requests from the banks. The banks are saying we need more coins in the bank to handle transactions
Right.
when people cash their paychecks. But then when the people cash their paychecks, those little pennies and nickels, they go in a jar and they spend the dollars, right?
Yeah.
And then they get change back in pennies and nickels and dimes and quarters, and those go back in a jar.
Yeah.
So we're on this kind of endless loop. I would like to see actually what happens if we actually just stop doing it, to see how long it would take before we saw some kind of, massive issue with this.
Yeah, that's right.
They
That's
did.
right.
I mean, it's amazing if you do stick your coinage in a jar or something like that, and then actually haul it to a bank sometime. It's like, oh wow, there's a lot of money. I mean, that's why the development of Coinstar, right? Those machines.
Yeah,
They
that's
turned
right.
them into gift cards and a whole bunch of things, because people didn't want to go to a bank, but they didn't mind paying Coinstar
Yeah,
and stuff
that's
like
right.
that. So anyway, all right, enough of that. Go ahead and give us 30 seconds and do a few things here, and I'll close.
Let's see. There wasn't much of a Super Bowl. Musk changer. Musk changer. Musk changing his Twitter handle was pretty funny.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
And
Let's see.
he got CNN to read the new name.
Yeah, that's right. He's really had a lot of fun goofing on CNN. She said they won't take change. The other thing is, like, if you go to the bank and say, I want to give Brian McNichol $100, put this $100 in his bank account, they won't do it. Right. And that infuriates me. If you want to put money in my account, you should be free to do that.
It's legal
all
tender.
Day long.
It's legal tender.
Yeah. Gulf of America Day. Fort Bragg. Okay, so they changed the name back to Fort Bragg. It is not named for the Braxton Bragg, the Civil War general, anymore. It's named for a soldier whose record deserves dishonor, right? And people are howling about that. But, like, if you go down there, if you go to Fayetteville, and I do go to Fayetteville from time to time on the way to some places, and they have an Astros farm team there. So I actually stop at Fayetteville some and watch baseball. But the whole town, everything is named the Fort Bragg Cleaners, the Fort Bragg Grill, the Fort Bragg this and that and the other, right? Because it's been called Fort Bragg for a long, long time. So when you go change the name of that, you really didn't really serve that community well, So now it's back to being Fort Bragg, and they didn't rename it after the Civil War guy, and that's not enough for the leftists. But, like, who cares?
I thought that was a brilliant move, in the sense of, like, we're renaming it Fort Bragg. It's just not after the other Bragg.
Right.
Take that, left.
Right. We're just gonna, you're gonna make it hard on us. We're gonna make it hard on you.
Yeah, I mean, look, they start returning that. It's like all you got to do is find another person with a decent record, with the same last name, and voila, you get, Fort Hood gets renamed. You get all these things. You can just read. You can say, I'm going to have another Fort Hood, but it's going to be after this person, not that person.
Yeah.
I don't know. Frankly, I don't know who thought about that, but I thought it was a brilliant masterstroke to do that, to basically say, just to kind of thumb their nose at the liberals who had forced all this on them. So,
yeah.
Anyway,
so, like the high school here in Fairfax County, W.T. Woodson High School. W.T. Woodson was a school administrator back in the segregation days, so they changed it to C.G. Woodson, who was. I think he's black, but I'm not really sure. But he's acceptable to the PC crowd. It's okay to name stuff after him.
Yeah, I guess you could do that. I guess you could take some of those high schools. Montgomery County had some things like this, and just find another person with that last name that wasn't associated with that, and then you would say the name is basically the same, because if I ever referred to the school in Virginia, I would have said it would have been Woodson. I wouldn't have worried about the initials. It's kind of like I don't really think about Zadok Magruder. I think
Right.
I just call it Magruder, you know.
Right.
So, and I don't, you know, if it winds up being Charles Magruder, you know,
Yeah.
fine,
Who cares?
whatever. So anyway, all right, we went a little over, but that's fine. Anyway, thanks everyone for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed it. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America. And the show next week will be on Thursday because we'll be tied up on Wednesday. And there'll be a little bit of a scattered schedule going forward as I deal with my travels. So we'll let you know every week how that's working out. Thanks once again. We'll see you again next week.